Before today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. If you want to see a case or topic covered by Paranormally Listed, then go to criminallylisted.com and fill out the questionnaire under the Suggest a Case tab. Number 3. The U-28 Monster. They were huddled in the conning tower, which is the cylindrical top of the submarine. 7 cold, sea-splashed German submarine sailors, aghast at what they were seeing. Minutes earlier, the crew of the U-28 Schmidt had been celebrating. Their torpedoes had found their target, the British steamer SS Iberian, off the southwest coast of Ireland. The Iberian didn't have a chance as it went down that day, July 30th, 1915. As the ship listed and began to sink, the submarine surfaced, and those 7 crew members, including skipper Baron von Forstner, emerged to watch it go down. They were not more than a few hundred feet away, but as the Iberian disappeared below the choppy waters, something incredible happened. Unbelievable, some might say. Seconds after it sank, the Iberian's boilers exploded underwater, which is not an uncommon occurrence. But the force of that explosion brought something to the surface, brought it above the surface. The German seamen watched in awe. Among the wreckage flying into the air was a creature. As von Forstner wrote 18 years later, this creature had a long, tapering head and a long body with 2 pairs of legs. Its length may have been some 20 meters. In shape, it was more like a crocodile than anything else. He also observed that the creature had webbed feet, a long snout, and a pointed tail. According to the skipper, this croc-like sea monster rose 80 feet into the air and then splashed down on the surface of the North Atlantic. The U-28's crew, including its chief engineer, its navigator, and its helmsman, watched as it writhed and struggled amidst the Iberian's wreckage. Then, slowly, it submerged, never to be seen again. Even upon the Baron's revelation years later, there was skepticism. Some wondered why he waited so long, 20 years, to report the incident. Believers have pointed out that decorated sea captains prone to wild imaginations perhaps would quickly lose their commands. Others who believe the story wonder if there is a scientific explanation for the sighting. Some people believe what they saw that day were the prehistoric Morosaurus or Pliosaurus, possibly surviving and living deep in the Atlantic. One noted cryptozoologist speculated that what the crew had seen was a Madaria rigidid, essentially a dinosaur crocodile. But those creatures' fossils have shown them to have fish-like tails, not pointed ones like the Baron saw. Could the creature's fishtail have been blown off by the underwater explosion? Either way, Baron von Forstner admitted that the sighting happened so fast no one on the conning tower had time to get a camera. But what of those 6 other crewmen at the Baron's shoulder who also bore witness to the creature? These men were named by the Baron in his report. They were Deichmann, Ziemer, Romes, Paurich, Maas, and Bartels. Unfortunately, or perhaps conveniently for the Baron, all those men died during the rest of the war, never able to refute or corroborate their captain's incredible tale. Number 2. The SS Nestor. The shipwide call came from the 3rd officer of the SS Nestor. It was almost like that classic movie trope. He said, "Sir, you better come up here. There's something you need to see." Commander John Webster excused himself from brunch and headed up to the bridge. As he went, he could hear whisperings from the passengers on the deck. There was definitely something amiss. And when he arrived at the bridge at 10 a.m. on September 11th, 1876, the skipper could plainly see what the fuss was about. The Nestor was a steamship, so its cruising speed was about 11 miles per hour. But swimming right along the Nestor's starboard side was a creature, matching the speed of the vessel, darting and diving through the surf. At first glance, this sounds like a whale of a tale, but since when are whales yellow? Besides, as Webster wrote in a letter to the Straits Times newspaper, this creature was unlike any whale he'd ever seen. A, quote, terrible-looking monster, unquote, he said. It had a yellow square tail that was 12 feet wide and cylindrical black and yellow striped tail that was covered in scales, like that of a dragon in a fairy tale book. Its body was green and yellow and had no fins, flippers, or legs. The captain called the ship's surgeon, John Anderson, to verify what he was seeing. The doctor saw it too and was equally astounded. Indeed, the Nestor's passengers had begun to line the ship's railing as word spread about the amazing creature swimming beside them. For a half hour, nearly the entire ship's contingent observed the marine monster. One witness noted that it seemed to leave an oily substance in the water as it undulated through the waves. After a while, the creature dropped back behind the Nestor, but then caught up with the ship's port side. It showed no sign of fear, Captain Webster wrote. Then it dropped back again and swam off, disappearing under the surf, while the Nestor continued on its journey from Calcutta to Liverpool. Dozens of witnesses, all with ample time to view the creature, confirmed the sighting, and all agreed with Captain Webster and Dr. Anderson's physical description of the monster. But not all could agree exactly what they saw. Some said it resembled a massive 45-foot tadpole. Others said it was more akin to a 60-foot salamander. Theories abounded at the time, and have ever since. One camp claims that the Nestor encountered a Kelonidea, essentially a massive sea turtle. But that might not explain the thing's freakishly long tail. In 1980, one marine biologist wondered if what the Nestor encountered that September day in 1876 was not one creature, but millions. He postulated that Webster and company had seen a massive school of sea cucumber larvae that happened to be in the shape of a tadpole. Those creatures do secrete an oily substance. But the trouble with that theory is the speed at which those little guys had to be swimming. And they don't really swim. Another theory is that the ship had become unknowingly ensnared in a downed, hot air balloon and it was dragging it along the water. Not out of the realm of possibility. Hot air balloons were a favorite hobby and sport of the era. But this wouldn't explain why the so-called creature wasn't observed nestled right up alongside the ship's hull. Perhaps the best theory came shortly after the Nestor account was published in the newspapers around the world. In a letter to the editor, one seaman wrote in to say that he once observed a massive water snake while sailing in the same year in the same area. The snake had wrapped itself around a whale, and the sailor watched as it crushed the whale to death. The man wrote the ribs of the ill-fated fish were distinctly heard cracking one after the other, with a report like that of a small cannon. A giant anaconda-like sea snake able to crush a whale to death? If that's not a sea monster, what is? Number 1. The Daedalus. It was discovered to be an enormous serpent. So began the official report of Captain Macquay to his superiors in the British Royal Navy in 1848. Macquay had been in command of the HMS Daedalus, sailing the South Atlantic about 300 miles off the shore of South Africa, when a midshipman alerted him and his officers to the creature. In his report, Macquay described the creature as able to keep its head and shoulders 4 feet above the water while swimming. He estimated it as 60 feet long and had come close to the ship's hull that, as he put it, if it had been someone I knew, I could easily recognize his features. He described its colors as dark brown with yellowish white around its throat and added that it had no fins. There was also something running down the back of the creature, like a horse's mane, though he did add that it could have been seaweed. The others on the ship saw it too, and later backed up their captain's description of the creature. The hubbub might have ended there had Macquay's report not leaked to the London press. Just 6 days after the Daedalus returned to port, the Illustrated London News published an exhaustive account of the Sea Monsters sighting, accompanied by professional engravings drawn with the input of the good captain. Soon after the newspaper hit the stands, biologist Sir Richard Owen, who incidentally coined the term dinosaur, wrote an article deriding the whole affair. Obviously, he wrote, the creature was a common elephant seal. But Captain McY angrily rejected Owen's dismissal. He knew what an elephant seal looked like, and this was not that. The Navy was also angry and embarrassed, and Captain McY was seldom heard from again. You think that given the ridicule sprayed upon McY after his report, other British sea captains might be hesitant to go on the record with further sea monster sightings. You'd think that, but you'd be wrong. 50 years after the Daedalus debacle, British naval captain R.J. Kringle reported a sighting of his own while aboard the steamship Umfully. On December 4, 1893, also off the coast of South Africa, Kringle and his men reported seeing a creature darting through the water alongside their vessel, keeping match with the ship's speed of 11 knots per hour. According to Kringle in his report, it was at least 80 feet long, with shining skin and a snake-like shape. Its head and neck rose 15 feet out of the water as it swam. Kringle told his first mate to use binoculars to confirm the sighting. The first officer did, and reported the creature had an enormous mouth with great rows of teeth. Kringle then noticed the creature was pulling ahead of the ship, so ordered the helmsman to speed up to catch it. When the creature passed 14 knots, Kringle gave up, watching as the serpent sped through the water and away. Like McY before him, Kringle also drew up an official report of his sighting and sent it to his superiors in London. He regretted this almost immediately, and he carried that regret for the rest of his life. In 1929, a full 36 years after his creature encounter, Kringle reportedly told a friend he'd been ridiculed for all those years. I wish that anybody else had seen that sea monster rather than me, he said. He went on to explain that his superiors told him he'd actually seen everything from a school of dolphins to a floating island of seaweed. But, Kringle said, if an island of seaweed can travel at a rate of 14 knots an hour, or a string of dolphins can stand 15 feet out of the water, then I give in and confess myself deceived. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.